Yay, economics video. Yay. Yes, okay, I am working on it still though. It's not ready yet, but I'm going to go through some of the ideas and concepts and where I'm heading, and I'll explain stuff. Yeah, and then this will help me, I think, more than it will help you, maybe. Yeah, who knows? We'll see how it goes. Yeah, there's enough light here. So anyway, let's start off with what we got here is a diagram. We use a pointer. Alright, so we have, let's see, can you read that? Yeah, I can read that good enough. Alright, so I use different faces for these things. Well, look, in overview, the end game is there's this stuff called value, and you consume it and you produce it. So it's input and output. And that's what we get from each individual human is, we try to reduce how much they consume and try to maximize how much they produce in terms of you looking at the rest of the world, right? That's what you want from the rest of the people in the world, is you want them to be net producers, and you want them to do it kind of aggressively. You want them to produce earnestly, but theoretically, in some sort of construction of a whole economy, we want to try to make all the horses kind of comfortable. We want to have just the right amount of carrots in front of all of them to get the most work out of them, and we don't want to have to whip any of them, and we don't have to, we really don't want to have to make it messy. We want people to enjoy their work, feel good about being productive, even if it's not pleasant work, to be compensated appropriately for their contribution to civilization, to the welfare of all the little beasties. And that's the net game we're trying to play. Now I know these other people are trying to play some other game, some completely self-interest game that can't work theoretically anyway, would only create monarchy if you let it run loose. And so they try to take this selfish game and say, okay, we'll try to control it a little bit. So anyway, this video is provoked by the modern mystic, who posted 2 very good videos, but flawed for different reasons. So one guy, the Adair guy, Lord whatever, somebody, and his argument basically is the problem is what we have lent money for. So the banks have made this error in they've given money to people who are just consuming, or businesses that are just getting by. And the investment hasn't been good investment. Okay, so he's conceding it's basically a print the money as you like system, which it sort of is, but it's print debt. It isn't print money. It's the IOUs that matter. It's not the money doesn't matter. It's the IOUs that matter. The creation of them. The cash is just the mechanism through which it's done, but it makes no difference. That just has to do with inflation and what things cost for you to buy things and stuff like that, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the economy itself. If the government was worried about inflation, it can fix that anytime it wants to by just burning cash. Anyway, the real point is that he's arguing that all you have to do is a few more controls on the system. So it's not like the system is broken. It just needs to have more regulation. So it sounds like a financial whatever guy, Lord whatever, working for the government guy, sort of sounds like a government guy. And the other guy is going back all the way to the Chicago plan thing, which is basically just saying, oh, it's the fiat money, which isn't really fiat money, it's fiat IOU creation. It's not the same thing as money, it really isn't. An IOU, an obligation to pay a debt, is not the same thing as money. Yes, you can trade one for money, but it's not creating money. Anyway, that's another point. They have this fake argument about, okay, let's go back to a gold standard and coinage and stuff and make the cash really valuable, And there's no point, as the Adair guy points out, that just ends up creating a stupid cash system where as people start hoarding it and just inflating the price of it, and it just, there's no point in doing that. No need to do that. Cash isn't value. Cash is merely an insurance policy for contracts. That's what cash is. Okay, so I wrote down cash, and I put on cash a little straight face, okay? It doesn't have a smiley face, it doesn't have a frowny face, it's a straight face. And the idea is to have cash decrease in value a little bit each year. So just have a little bit of inflation to degrade the cash every year, so nobody wants to hold on to cash. So no one hoards it. No one puts it in a mattress. No one makes their investments like gold, right? Gold, you buy gold, you stick it in your cellar, and you automatically get richer just by buying it. See, that's kind of evil, right? I mean, the idea that you get richer by just buying it, that seems kind of silly, right? Because you make it rarer by hiding it in your basement. And you don't want cash to be like that. Trust me. Anyway, so cash goes down in value a little bit, and it's just a regular straight face, no big deal. Okay, IOUs, well, that's the frowny face. That's just death, okay? Money goes out to finance the IOU, so that's a loser. That inflates. That it gets you income if you hold it. It's an income maker. Cash is an income loser. IOUs are an income maker. Deeds to real stuff durable, so that's a happy face. Owning the deeds to things that are real, that don't expire or degrade or turn into shit or rust or any of that kind of crap, like a house, for example, or a business. That's a good thing to have a deed to, a real deed, okay? Not a stock. That goes up in value. Non-durable consumption stuff, yes, that's a laughy face. It's good times, but that's bad news. Okay, it just goes down in value. It just wears out, a car or some other kind of thing. So yeah, it makes you happy to have it, but it's nothing but a loser in the long run. It's not an investment. Alright, so the components we got here is work income, okay, and then I put benefits over here because benefits get kind of tricky. Because, you know, we migrated income into benefits, and that was a total disaster. And then you got interest risk income. So that's the income people make off their stocks and all the other kind of crap. That's just crap, okay, but they call it risk income. And it's taxed much lower, and yeah, that's the whole evil of our economy, basically. That's how the rich get richer, is this interest income, ownership income is taxed much lower than working income, which is really dumb. And then pension income, that's what some people are living off of, like Social Security. You know, it's another benefit. But the racket is, okay, so first, this is kind of bad. This, you know, don't work and get paid for not working. That's already kind of a loser. But what they've done with this benefit thing is they put these pensions, you know, into the stock market, which I'll get to later. But yeah, that's what they've done. Is you know, that's another way to cheat the system. Yes, put the benefits, you know, put the money you owe, the debt, into the stock market so everybody thinks they're richer. So that's one of the scams that went on. So first it was pretty bad with the Social Security Trust Fund, right? They, you know, had the extra money in the fund, and they basically took the money out so the rich people, the income taxpayers, didn't have to pay their taxes. They could afford to give lots of tax breaks because they borrowed the Social Security money, $2 trillion worth. And, you know, that was really bad. Payroll taxers paying in advance, the working people paying in advance with real cash into a fund so rich people can defer their taxes to some future day, never, and put the money in the stock market with the pension funds and pretend they're getting richer, right? The Dow's hitting 16,000. It's an insane number. Yeah, it's insane. Insanely overvalued. Crash all over the place. big time. So now we're going to get into that when we get to we got leverage, secured, and permanent. Okay, so these are all words I used for different kinds of debt. You know, leverage debt versus secure debt, which is the only kind of debt that probably should be. And then you got permanent debt, which is just totally disastrous. So that's like the government debt. They'll never pay that money back, because to pay the money back, they basically have to cause a huge recession. There's no other way to pay the money back. You know, unless the rich get preposterously richer, you know, but you can't afford to do that too long, because the only way they get richer is by having debt contracts, which mean they're entitled to more income off the commerce. But that's the whole joke of the economy, is that a tiny percentage of the people, tiny, 15% maybe, are doing all the productive work that everybody else is living on. So all the productivity, all the real value, the value, is being produced by a small percentage of workers. The rest of the workers are doing paperwork, nonsense, bureaucracy, crap, no value added whatsoever. Just calling you on the telephone, annoying you, nagging you, cheating you, ripping you off, writing small print, lawyers, all that kind of crap. Tons of people working that aren't doing anything productive at all. They're just throwing crap into the gears and just creating friction and, you know, wasted work, wasted energy. And so that's the irony, is that, you know, the real value was in all this huge productivity gains in terms of mechanization and the Industrial Revolution, and none of it was realized by the people, you know, the working people, because the rich stole it all. And the working people should have been, instead of working 40 hours a week, they should be working 20 hours a week. That's the real value of the productivity. If they got to realize it, they'd maybe even work 10 hours a week. I mean, there's such a small fraction of people doing productive work. And the rich are the ones collecting all the income. So all the value out of the work, instead of going to the worker, is going to the owners. Yeah, through all these debt contracts. Alright. Alright, so I mean, it's a simple concept to understand that as soon as you create debt, you know, you create this added obligation that has to be paid out of some kind of value, some kind of productivity has to pay for that interest. So you can't, there's no free lunch. You can't collect a salary. The rich person can't collect their interest, their salary, unless somebody actually does the work to create the value that their salary is made out of. And then what does the rich person do when he has collected that salary? He squanders it on absolute crap. You know, manicured this and fiddle-faddle that and marble this and blah blah blah. All this luxury crap that has no social value, that very few people enjoy, but took a lot of labor to produce. And so, you know, the rich are giving their money back. People would think, oh, they're creating jobs. But they're waste jobs. They're not socially productive jobs. They're not creating the durable value. They're producing happy rich person for a day. And that's really bad. Okay, now where am I? Yeah. Alright, so there's certain things you can own. Okay, you can own the means of production, right? So you can own the businesses. But, you know, a lot of those are now public companies because it's just too good a deal. I mean, even if you owned a business and you say, shit, this is really good, I own the business, you'd almost have to argue that the only sensible thing is to go public because you can make a killing. You can basically sell your business for 10 times what it's worth by going public. You know, and so it's just too good an offer. You know, and you know, instead of buying, I mean, the thing it would do, I guess, is to go public with the business and then take the money, a huge pile of money you make, and buy other businesses with it. You know, that'd be the sensible thing to do. I don't know if they, not too many of them seem to do that though. But anyway, other resources. I guess I was talking about commodities basically. It's hard to, there's not too many resources that don't fit into these two categories of, you know, the means of production would include the resources that are part of production. The buildings, the land, whatever they use to produce. And then you got commodities, so energy, food, land, labor, you could buildings, whatever. But you got gold is in there, metals. They're in my opinion going to be a loser in the end. They're a short-term winner when people get scared, but there's a point where it goes over the edge, where people just are going to say, no, I need something to eat. I don't need a piece of gold. And so they're really not going to want to make deals for gold, because they're not going to trust it, number one. When you make something too valuable per ounce, then you create too big an incentive for people to get very clever in terms of counterfeit. So I think there's going to be a ton of counterfeit metal out there once things go bad, because no one's going to be able to afford to have everything tested. So anyway, it doesn't matter though. Stocks and bonds. So that Bitcoin stuff might be a better investment than gold, because at least that thing has a complete computer record. But anybody can fraud that up too. People that have access to the main record keeping thing. Anyway, alright, then you got stocks and bonds, which is just IOUs, right? And currencies. People trade in currencies, but that's another dead end, because they're only going to have value as long as they're not printed. And so as soon as everybody goes bankrupt, government's going to have to start printing cash, because they're going to have all kinds of bills to pay. They're going to have to send out the Social Security checks, whether they got the income coming in or not. Whether it's a tax base to tax or not, they're still going to have to pay these bills. So they're going to start printing the cash, and the cash won't be worth anything. The bonds are dead. Even the bonds that are part of the business model, once the business starts losing money, there's a point where it's going to create enough of its own debt where it's going to get swallowed up by hard immediate debt before it can even pay the bondholders off. So even bonds in public companies are probably in trouble. But certainly the bonds the U.S. government holds, there's no way it can pay them back without printing the cash. In a real hard economy, if the things really start going bad and the tax revenues go down by half because the stock market goes down by half, there's no way the government can do anything but print the cash. There's no other place it can get the money. So bonds are only going to be valuable, retain any value, in a hugely inflationary environment. So if you own a $1,000 bond, yeah, it still might get you $1,000, but it's going to be $1,000 in an economy where $1,000 buys a loaf of bread. So it might be backed by the U.S. government, but it isn't backed by anything other than the value of the currency, and the currency can't retain any value if there's too much debt to pay. And there's too much debt to pay. So the real argument I would make is that, yeah, there's too much debt. And whether it's created by bankers or whether it's created by rich people in some other mechanism, the truth is that there's people who have the capacity to who have, since this is where the leverage thing gets into it, so I guess let's try to work with that. Because the real game is how much of this, how many of these IOUs is really secured loans. So how much of the ownership claims are really secured with real assets. So there's two ways the rich get rich, right? They get rich because they actually have earning potential, in the sense that they have pulled real income out of, like, let's say China. So they're pulling real income out of China. See, there's no productive American workers left, in terms of industrial. So they're just doing, like, electricity, they're doing, the energy infrastructure. Those are some productive workers. Building houses, those are productive workers. Roads, those are productive workers. But that's about it. Just these hardware people are the only people doing anything productive. And then there's, virtually no industry. So, but anyway, what was I going to say here? Yeah, the rich, there's two kinds of loans. Secured loans make sense, right? Okay, so if somebody comes to me and they want to borrow some money and they say, oh, look, I own some land, here's the deed to the land, you give me the money, you have the deed, if I don't pay you back, you keep the deed. Really simple. I mean, not complicated. And those are loans likely to get paid off because the person loses their asset if they don't pay them off. Now, the ones that go bad are the ones for, yes, they made the loan, but they made it on like the housing bubble. The real problem wasn't that they made too many loans, it's that they made too many loans in an environment where prices were inflated too high, and then when prices fell, the collateral is no longer worth what the loan was worth, and therefore people defaulted on the loans because they had no incentive to pay the loan off. I mean, versus bankruptcy or something. So that's why they changed bankruptcy rules, is to try to force people to stick to these contracts that were really bad debt contracts. So anyway, the rich get rich in two ways. They can get rich this legitimate way, which is still nasty. This whole idea of, basically forcing somebody to, mortgage their kids or mortgage whatever they got to get money so they can survive another year. And then there's this more dishonest part where the rich loan money that they don't really have. Okay, it's not real money, it's debt money, and it's debt money in an environment that is totally inflationary, in the sense that it's a totally inflated definition of wealth. So if I go to a bank and I got some IBM stock and I tell the bank I'd like to borrow and I'll use my stock as collateral, there's banks that will take they'll take that deal. And in taking that deal, they're basically accepting this inflated price of a 16,000 Dow. That's a real number, and that IBM stock should be worth that. And the fact is, it shouldn't be anywhere near that. It should be half that or a quarter that. And so now they're borrowing money in a secured way, technically, but it's secured by a debt-driven, debt-inflated stock market where there is no actual value. So as I've stated before, all the debt goes to the stock market. The stock market has no real value in it. None of the stock is worth anything. It's all penny stock, in the sense that every $100 of stock you own is only worth $1. It's in real assets. So in a failing economy, all these future earnings crap goes down the toilet, and that doesn't matter anyway. The reason why people are buying stock is because they are being allowed to, because no one has to pay any of the real bills. And so everybody's just allowed to keep selling pieces to the pie. I used this analogy before, but I think it's a good analogy. I mean, there's so many pieces to this pie, and the rich are claiming let's say there's 10 pieces of pie. The rich are basically claiming there's 1,000 pieces of pie, and they just keep adding numbers to this piece of pie, to this pie. But these pieces of pie aren't worth anything. But as long as no one goes to eat this pie, they can get away with this. So I mean, you can get away with these Ponzi schemes, these frauds of overvaluing the value of the economy, saying the gross domestic product is, and that whole gross domestic product number is based on a bunch of debt consumption based on borrowed money, and so it's all not real production. But anyway, so the basically what's happened is there's IOUs outstanding for a certain amount of total production, and so there's the total production of the economy, or the total assets, the total stuff, and there's more IOUs. The IOU value way overinflates the real value that this stuff is selling for, that its real value is. And so as long as no one comes and says, I want to eat a piece of this pie, you can get away with it. But as soon as somebody starts eating the pie, then it's going to become more and more obvious that there isn't going to be enough pie to go around. And that's what's going to happen to the stock market and all this other bullshit, is that once the government stops spending money it doesn't have, bonds and printing cash and all the other shenanigans it does to create more debt, as soon as that stops, then this stops and it starts contracting, and people start saying, give me real pie. They start wanting their real assets out of here. And once that starts happening, it's going to spiral, and the whole thing's going to go turn into nothing, and everybody's going to keep, everybody's going to, like the bank that's holding that IBM stock as collateral, all of a sudden their collateral is going to turn into $10 from $1,000. And they're going to be saying, we have a totally uncollateralized loan now, and there might be 70% of the principal that still hasn't been paid. And so they're going to be really in trouble, because who's going to pay a loan if, like I said, especially in an environment where everybody else is going bankrupt? Yeah, they're just going to go bankrupt instead. So I think that's enough. So what I really have to get to, like I said, the real thing. So the point I'm trying to make is that, let's say I colored this stuff to different colors. You could see that over time what has happened is there's this huge growth of these IOUs that are disguised as real stuff. And they're not real stuff. They're IOUs. They're promises on future earnings. They're promises on a future productivity. They're promises on something that doesn't exist. And if they have to be liquidated, they have to be realized now, they can't be, because they're based on 10 years of labor that hasn't been produced yet. And it's silly. Yeah, that's enough for now. But anyway, when people start leaving the stock market, they're going to start buying the commodities, and that's when the inflation will start. Because then the real money is going to try to get real assets, and the stock market money isn't real money. Yeah, so it's going to get ugly. All right, that's enough for now. Yeah. So anyway, I put in quotes "to whom," because that was the whatever his name is, guy's question is, who has been lent all this money. And apparently his argument is obviously that bums. Yeah, people have been lent money for consumption, not for production. They haven't used the money to create production. They've just used the money to get by, to have more to consume another year. But that's it. And a ton of it's unsecured debt, and even the stuff that's secured isn't secured with anything real. Yeah. Or anything that's going to have durable value. Okay, that's enough. So, till the next time, and such.